Hey guys, I'm Dave and welcome to the Trull Gallery. Today, we're going to see if we can make this frame fit this picture. If you're like me, once in a while you have a friend that reaches out with an interesting woodworking project. In this case, we've got a relatively inexpensive picture, and to put it in a frame that would fit it at, say, Michael's or one of those places is hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So my friend asked me if I had some stock kicking around and maybe I could make something that'll make these two kind of look like they belong together. Let's see if we can pull this one off.
I grabbed some 3/4 inch poplar scraps and set my table saw fence to just over 1.25 inches and ripped down 4 pieces of stock. A few passes through the planer removed any saw marks as I took them down to their final width of 1.25 inches. If I placed the new strips along the outside of the frame, I think it would look too clunky. Since I kept the strips 3/4 inch thick, I can set them along the inner rabbet of the frame. This left me with about a 3/8 inch wide inset, and it should make the frame appear lighter. At the miter saw, I cut a 45-degree angle on one end of each piece. I took one long and one short piece, set them in place on the frame, and marked the inside of the miters for the second cut. I clamped the stock in place and snuck up on my mark. Once I got the length just right, I cut the mating piece. Then I reset the stop and cut the other pair. Using a stop on cuts like these and clamping the stock to the saw ensures that the two pieces are the same length and the stock does not get pulled into the blade, changing its angle. I dry assembled the new extension frame with blue tape to double check my fit before the glue up. Now I can add a bit of glue to both faces of each joint and reapply the tape to hold things in place for now. With all 4 corners glued together, I added a few clamps to help hold things tight. With the clamps in place, I checked for square, and when I got the diagonals to match, I left it to dry overnight. Miter joints are not known for their strength, and while this is just a frame that will be attached to another frame, this may be overkill, but let's strengthen those miters. I grabbed my spline jig and set the fence for a single centered curve on each corner. I raised my blade so my curve would be just shy of the full depth of that corner, then set the new frame in the jig. One pass on each corner is all that I needed to beef up these miters. After ripping some scrap stock down to the thickness of my kerf, I cut the 4 splines at the miter saw. You could do this at the bandsaw or by hand, but the miter saw works just as well. Just make sure to keep your fingers well clear of the blade, and once you've made each cut, let the blade come to a full stop before raising the blade up through your stock. Small pieces like this can get grabbed by the blade, and you don't want to get startled when your hand is that close to a spinning saw. A little glue on either side of each spline and they can be set in place. Just make sure the spline is fully seated to minimize any gaps. Clamps aren't necessary here, but they do prevent the spline from being pushed out by the glue in the kerf. Once the glue had ample time to dry, I came back with my flush cut saw and trimmed off the excess splines. I should mention that if you use an alternate top bevel saw blade like I did, you'll get these pointy voids. A flat top grind will leave you a flat bottom kerf, and one of these days I'll buy one of those blades. But until I do, I'll just hide those voids with a bit of filler. I plan on using screws to connect the extension frame to the store-bought frame, so I pre-drilled the pilot holes before painting. Using a drill press with a fence and depth stop makes drilling multiple consistent holes quick and easy. I'm not usually a fan of rattle cans, but in this case it should work just fine. Several light coats are all it should take to get the finish looking close to that of the original frame. Taking a break from spraying, I applied a layer of painter's tape to the underside of the existing frame. Now I can set the extension frame on it and clamp it in place. I use a sharp razor knife to score the tape on all sides. With that done, I remove the clamps and the extension frame, and then carefully remove the tape on the inner edges of the frame. Since I decided to glue and screw the two frames together, I gave the exposed underside of the frame a good sanding with 120 grit paper to give it some tooth for the adhesive to hold onto. I got fed up with the spray paint and I brushed on one good coat of black paint. When that had time to dry, it was time to remove the tape from the underside. This clean face is where I'll use some type of adhesive to help hold the two frames together. I decided to use epoxy to secure the frames, and I know that can get messy. More blue tape, this time on the exterior of the frame extension to protect the finish during the glue-up. Just make sure to use a sharp razor blade to trim off any excess from the mating face. I mixed up some 2-part epoxy and used an acid brush to paint it on the underside of the original frame. Since I had some left over, I painted the exposed face of the frame extension as well. I figured more is better. Now the frames can be sandwiched together and clamped in place. I started in the corners and added some 1.5-inch long screws to help hold things together. I checked my alignment as I went, and once all the corners were set, I went back and added a few more screws on each side. Then it was time to wipe out any squeeze out, both inside and out. Once everything was clean, I removed the painter's tape. I chose to remove it now rather than after the epoxy dried. Once that happens, the tape can be a real bear to remove. By pulling it off now, the tape was only a little fussy. I let the epoxy dry overnight, and now it's time to set the picture into the new frame. To hold the picture in the frame, I'm going to use glazier's points. If you're not sure what glazier's points look like, they look like this. To give you an idea of their size, this point is sitting on a piece of 3/4 inch wide stock. These are designed to secure glass in a frame, but they'll work here as well. I use a putty knife to push the pointed end into the frame sides, and then the back of the points secure the picture. Again, I start with the corners, and once all 4 are set, I went back and put in extra points on each side. Nothing left to do now but hang the picture and see how our new extended frame looks.
This project was made from a few scraps of poplar I had kicking around the shop, and it took me probably less than 2 hours to complete it. That's gotta be a whole lot less than buying a custom frame somewhere. Love to hear your thoughts on this video. Was there something I could have done easier, safer, smarter? Drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear. As usual, I'll add some links to some of the tools and equipment I use in this video and around the shop on a daily basis. Some of them have affiliate links, and should you need one of those products and purchase it through those links, it does help keep this channel going. If you enjoyed this video, maybe give us a thumbs up and share it with friends. If you haven't already, maybe it's time to hit that subscribe button, the little bell, so you get notified every time I put out a new video. As usual, I don't know a clue what's coming up next, but it should be something interesting. So until then, have a great day, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye.